Hey everybody, what's up? So we are back with our table. It's all constructed for the most part. I might add a few more details to it, but it's all constructed. We have it primed out, and we did our first coat of sanding. So I just used this sponge, sanding sponge, and what these are great for, especially when it's something that has corners and seams and all of that. These things get right in there and get right in this edge, so everything's nice and sanded. I'm going to be spackling all of these screw holes. You can use bondo, wood filler, whatever on this kind of stuff. It doesn't really matter that much. This is going to be an inside table. It's not going to be outside in the elements. Just going to go ahead and stick with spackle. Spackle up these holes. So stay tuned, and we're just going to go over a few things about prep. And the last thing we want to do is caulk. So we're not going to do any caulking until all of our spackle is applied and sanded. And then the very last thing we're going to do is do the caulking on this. The reason for that is because if I caulked these seams, and then let's say I had to sand right next to one of the holes, there's a chance I could get my sandpaper. There's a chance that my sandpaper could touch that caulking and kind of sand it off and make it look bad. So we don't want to caulk until every bit of sanding and nail hole prep is on this thing. So stay tuned. All right, guys. So I'm not going to sit here and have you watch me spackle the whole table. So we'll just go over a few details and show you guys some tips on how to make it come out nice. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this stuff up. Sometimes water kind of sits on the top, and so you want to mix it up to give it a little more viscosity. And get right on down to the bottom. Mix everything on in there. And now it's ready. And you can use putty knife. You can use a 5-in-1. I'm using a 5-in-1. You can use a putty knife 5-in-1, or you can even use your finger. So, to do your finger, I'm sure you guys can see some holes. Hopefully you can see the holes on this thing. They're pretty big. So finger, I kind of push in. And you kind of want to wipe the excess around. We don't want to be sanding more than we have to. You want to leave it a little bit proud. So that means the spackle sitting a little bit above the surface. So, because the spackle could shrink, especially if there's bare wood underneath. Something I made sure and really made a point to do was after, I sanded this table, I went around and I made sure and get the primer angled into these holes. You can even take a little brush and just kind of put primer in the holes. And what I want to do is prime the bare wood and also prime the head of the screw to make sure whatever I put in here sticks and doesn't start separating because it's not bonding to each other. I don't know if that's critical to do with these screws. I haven't done a test or anything like that, but might as well just throw some primer in there to alleviate any worry, right? So, spackle. Here's with the knife. So the same thing, we want to kind of push it in there. And then what I like to do is so I got a little bit in there. Now I'm going to take a little bit over the top and lightly put it on there. So that's got some. It's a little bit easier with a putty knife. I think my putty knife's in the garage, so whatever. I figure this will give me an opportunity to show you guys how to use other tools to achieve the same result, or to achieve the same results here. Also, little cracks. There's a few small cracks in this table, so we want to fill those cracks up. Okay, that's pretty much up for the top. Here's a little knot hole right here. Just gonna throw some spackle on that. another little knot hole. It's that's another thing I like about the primer, is it kind of makes all of those things reveal itself. Once you spray primer on, you can see more cracks, and kind of shows you what else you need to prep. All right, so here is the outside, and with we have our screw holes here. It's the same thing. A little bit on there, leave it a little bit proud, give it some room to shrink in. Same thing. Here's a little knot. Little knot fill. The knots require much less because they're so small. So if you just push it in there with your finger, it should be good to go. Right here, a few of these screw holes, I want to mention this, a few of these screw holes, they had little bits of like wood sticking out. So I really made sure when I was sanding to kind of make sure none of them were above the surface, because if you spackle this and there's wood fibers coming out this way, all that's going to do is, it's not going to work. It's not going to sand down nice and smooth. You're going to sand it down and you're going to see a little tiny wood fiber sticking up. You're going to have to pick that out, and you're going to have to re-spackle and re-sand it. So make sure if you got screw holes, to go around and make a point to make sure nothing is above the hole, right? Because we're trying to get this perfectly flush with the wood, and if we have little wood fibers coming out, we sand that off. Those wood fibers are going to be sticking out just a little bit, and it's not going to get that perfect look that you're looking for. And that's pretty much it, guys. So we're going to sand this down. We're going to prime it one more time, and then we're going to paint this thing. Or actually, after we sand it down, we're going to caulk it. We're going to caulk here, underneath there. We're going to caulk all the inside seams up there. Here's my one gap. That's okay, because we're going to use some caulking. And we're going to caulk like right here. There's a little tiny, tiny seam. We're going to caulk that just to make sure it all disappears when this stuff gets painted. Alright, so we'll see you the next time. We'll have this. I might make a video about how to sand the spackle down to get it nice and flush. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Oh, also a quick little point I wanted to make. I can't remember if I recorded this or not a few minutes ago, but all the screw holes, I made sure and vacuumed those out very well before I sprayed primer in there. Also, I like to usually use tack rags, which I did also, but this table really needs to be, just because of this edge, really needs to be vacuumed out with like a fine tip, on a vacuum. Also, duster, vacuum, and tack rag is really what it's going to take to get this thing nice and clean. But I went over every single screw hole and vacuumed all the screw holes out to make sure and suck every bit of dust out of there before I put the spackle. So the last thing you want to do is be putting spackle over, dust that's in the screw hole. All right, just wanted to make sure and put that point in there.